So today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's about working for a good company and more specifically what it's like to work for a company that eventually goes bankrupt, because that's something that I experienced recently and I feel like it's a kind of unique experience in that most companies you work at won't go bankrupt, but it really depends. So if you've been on my channel, you might have seen my other business-related videos, and they're about what to expect on the CPA exam or studying for the CPA exam and my experiences with that. So I have experience as a staff accountant, and most recently I was a staff accountant at a creative advertising agency. So since this is the Los Angeles area, there are many advertising agencies or entertainment groups in general, and I just happened to be a staff accountant at one of them. The accounting department was fairly small. It was only 3 people, which consisted of 1 SVP of finance and 2 staff accountants, one to do the AP side of things and the other to do the AR side of things. So basically I did the AR side of things, but I also assisted with bank reconciliations and other duties alongside the SVP. So I know advertising agencies in general have a pretty high turnover, and I saw that because they would have many independent contractors come in on a contract schedule. For example, they'd stay here 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, then they would be gone. So that's no surprise in that regard, and typically you think of accounting as being a stable job, but you have to reconsider that accounting is only a stable job in a stable company. So if a company is not profitable and if they haven't been for years, then naturally your accounting position wouldn't be as stable. And for my case, that was true. So one thing I noticed is the accounting department relied heavily on Excel, and especially when I started, we had multiple Excel worksheets. So if you want to update the aging, for example, that was on the Excel. You had to manually update the Excel, and then we'd have other worksheets that would correlate with that. So it was just a really tedious process, and typically you want to go by the accounting software. So you want to generate the reports from the software, you want to rely on the numbers in the software, but we had a different issue in that we were in between 2 softwares. So half of our work would be on one software, and half of our work would be on the other. And then you add on top of that all the Excel worksheets that we had to maintain and update. Altogether, it was a really disorganized situation, and at times that made for a really frustrating work environment. But I just kind of grew to get used to it and deal with it. And even though I knew the company wasn't in great financial standing, because of course we look at the numbers every day, we look at the cash position every day, we're aware of it, unlike other people at the agency, because they don't have access to all these financial records that we look at constantly. So how I came to know about the bankruptcy filing was my situation was kind of unique. So I took a 1.5 week vacation, because every year we have a family vacation that's pre-planned like up to a year in advance, so I couldn't miss that. So I took off 1.5 weeks of work, and I was trying to make sure to be rested, so I'm ready to go back to work the next day after the long flight. So I returned to work the next day after my vacation is over, and so I work there a few hours, try to get caught up on things. My coworker tries to bring me up to speed, and I just noticed that there's a lot of people missing from the agency. And when I talked to my coworker further, I hear that they were laid off, and some of them were asked to take an unpaid vacation. So usually when a company asks you to take unpaid time off, that's not a good sign, and the company is not in good financial health because they don't want to pay you for it, or there's not much work, etc. So with so many people not at the office, it was really quiet that day, and I just knew that they were going to get rid of someone else in the accounting department soon. And sure enough, that happened to be me that exact day. I honestly wasn't too surprised when I heard the news about them filing for bankruptcy, because for one, our expenses were so high, and although they were bringing in some business, it wasn't enough to compensate for the monthly expenses. And for one, we had these expensive lunches every single day, and that added up to be a huge cost of over $100,000 per year, and just other things were really lavish in my opinion. So now because of this, I realized that just because you work in accounting doesn't mean you will have a lot of job stability. Typically speaking, yes, you will, as long as you're not working for a bankrupt company. And I will have to say I did learn a lot from that company. Despite it being unorganized, I learned a lot about people and I guess the advertising industry and how much they actually end up spending. So I guess one of my biggest takeaways from this whole experience would be to not take things for granted. And I know we've heard that so many times, but seriously, if you have a relatively good job or relatively good pay, try to make sure to save a portion of that, because you don't know when it may end. unless you're your own boss, for example. But then again, there's a lot of things that can happen in the world that you can't exactly control or predict. So just in general, to not take things for granted. So that pretty much wraps up this video. If you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe, or you can comment down below if you have similar circumstances to myself or any other business circumstances like this, which are kind of out of the ordinary, but sometimes we have to deal with them. Thanks for watching.